Hello and welcome back to CGS with me, Paul Harris. Today we're catching up with Ari Sussman, Executive Chair of Collective Mining. A lot's happened. The company's put a lot of news out in the last few weeks. I've been traveling extensively, so haven't had a chance to catch up with Ari for a while. Ari, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Paul, and yourself. And I too have been traveling, so good to catch up. And I'm looking forward to a quieter June, at home with the family.
Oh, well, I'm going to be on vacation in June, so it'd be quieter in some ways, but perhaps not as restful as it could be. A lot's happened. You've put out a lot of really good news in the past couple of months that I want to catch up with. Most recently, expansion drilling at Apollo. You announced at least 150-meter expansion to the north, an intercept there of 513.7 meters, grading 2.2 grams per ton gold equivalent. Let's start there. Apollo continues to grow. This is obviously another example of that. What's Apollo looking like now? Is there much more potential for growth there?
So look, it took us a while to figure out that the direction of the Apollo system is northwest. We were debating east-west to northwest, and it's very clearly northwest. So we put out these results. We drilled one of the holes to the northwest, and we cut 825 meters, of 1.11 grams per ton gold equivalent. That's a second longest intercept we've drilled, and the system remains completely open to the northwest. What one needs to speculate about is if you pull up our corporate presentation and look at the slide we have for Olympus, okay, it shows Apollo just south of it. And clearly there's a probability that they're going to merge in the northwest side of Apollo, into some kind of a one system, or you're going to have shallow Olympus with deeper Apollo below, because not far northwest from where the drilling at Apollo ended, we had those historical being 2022 Olympus intercepts from surface where we cut holes like 300 meters at 1.1 grams per ton gold equivalent in sheeted CBM veins. So there's plus 1,000 meters of potential to test there. Lots of activity in terms of what we need to do there. And, if they merge, you're adding a major second element to Apollo with Olympus as a connector. So it has big implications. And what I think is important for listeners or viewers is, obviously I think people believe, as we understand, that, Apollo will be mined as an open pit, but it will just be a starter pit with 1,000 meters vertical plus. You're going to go underground, right? We believe we're going to mine Apollo by sublevel caving, but wouldn't it be nice if you could kind of come in with underground development just north of Apollo and just south of Olympus in that connector zone and be able to access the north and south? What are the implications of that, and how big might it get? I don't know, but it has big potential.
Well, and that's one thing I've sort of picked up in some of your recent communications, Ari. You started to talk about the possibility of a porphyry-related system or multiple system capable of producing sort of 400,000 ounces a year of gold equivalent, that sort of level, which by any stretch of the imagination, that would be a very big gold project.
Yeah. So look, I don't think Apollo alone is going to produce at 400,000 ounces, but our hope is, and our goal is to get to outline a 400,000+ ounce producer by having at least two systems that can go to production, whether it's simultaneously or it's one after the other, I don't know, but it's very realistic that this could happen given the prospectivity. I mean, Paul, you've been to the project. You've also been to our neighbor, RS Mining's Marmato project in the past, I believe. And you think about this area, and so you're taking a approximately 6 square kilometer area, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that we're looking at a camp in excess of 20 or 30 million ounces of gold. I mean, we already know Marmato's resource is just shy of 9 million ounces, and we don't know how many millions have been mined historically, but it's millions because mining's been going on for more than 500 years there. We don't have a resource estimate yet at Apollo, as an example, but it is multi-million ounces. I can say that with a lot of confidence. There's no question of that. I don't know what Olympus will be, but you start to get the picture when you put this all together. This could be a very large gold camp. And thinking about just on our ground of 400 plus thousand ounces a year of production is a shot. I mean, I think it's going to happen because, you know, in my career, I've never seen geology like this. You kind of drill holes and you hit here, right? That's not the norm. That's the rarity in mining. And, you know, as they say in mining, when the surprises are good, you have a mine. Well, that's what we see here. So it's really exciting days. And we've got a big program in front of us with 40 plus thousand meters this year and 5 rigs now turning.
Now, Ari, you mentioned that you haven't got a resource estimate yet on Apollo. I know we've talked about this before, but what's the current thinking about when you think, A, you'll be in a position to do it, and B, when you want to do it?
Well, position to do it is we're gearing towards this plan for 2025. So, you know, by the end of 2025 or sooner, the aim is to come out with a resource estimate at Apollo and hopefully at one of the other systems, right? The goal at Apollo would be 50-ish% and indicated, the balance and inferred, and whichever other of the discoveries we bring up, it would be all inferred, right? But that's the goal, and that's how you demonstrate the potential for maybe 400 plus thousand ounces of annual production, is by having two systems growing simultaneously together. And how you develop them, well, that who knows? We'll figure that out afterwards, right?
Now, a lot of companies, when they publish their maiden resource estimate, it's pretty much an inferred resource. But you mentioned you potentially have 50% in indicated. Is that a conscious decision so that the maiden resource is much stronger, much more robust? People can start extrapolating to what potential reserves may be?
100%. Who cares these days about inferred resources? I memean, nobody trusts them anymore, right? So the goal at Apollo would be to take the approximately top 500 meters out of the 1,000 plus meters and put that into indicated. Obviously, it's easier to do shallow drilling tighter, quicker, and then leave the bottom half or so of the system into inferred. And that's our basic thinking of how we approach this.
Okay, and it's not just at Apollo that you've been very busy at Guayabales and Caldas. You've also, I think this was back in April, put out some very good results from the trap target, a 200-meter step out, which returned 632.25 meters, grading 1.1 grams per ton of gold equivalent. How is trap coming along, and how does that fit into the overall big picture at Guayabales?
Okay, so I think, and I put caution on the word think, that we have a geological model now worked out for trap. Trap has been confusing in a good way, right? We drill these holes, we have almost no outcrop, so we had to, by drilling, determine what we think the dip, the plunge, you know, the geometry of the system is. Use some technology to do that, but we see 3 styles of mineralization there over printing. We see a low-grade gold porphyry system. We see then 2 different styles of these late-stage porphyry-related veins, which we call CBM veins, overprinting. So which one of those carries the gold, most of the gold? Which one of those 3 is the driver? And then which direction are they coming? Because are they all in the same orientation? Are they coming in differently? What we think we figured out now, and I say this with caution, to wait for trap hole 11 because it tested the concept, is we have found a fault that's running roughly north-northwest to south-southeast, and it seems to have created a fairly wide deformation zone, maybe up to, you know, 150, maybe even 200 meters in true thickness, and that's where the grade sits. So these big long intercepts is not the way to approach this. We need to be thinking about this 150, 200 meter true thickness, you know, a deformation zone as the target. And that's what we're testing with the drilling now. So we finished hole 11. We're drilling. We moved a rig far south of there to do a giant crazy step out because we don't want to continue testing this concept until we have the assay results to see if we're right or wrong. The core looks good. It looks like in hole 11 that we are going to be correct based on the vein density and the alteration. But let's wait to get the assays. And if we're right, we can test this fault zone and this deformation zone for a very long way to the north and south, and it could have big implications in terms of overall size.
Okay, now having lots of metal in drilling intercepts is one thing, but being able to process it is quite another. And in that vein, you put out some metallurgical test results, initial metallurgical test work a few weeks ago. 30.5% copper, 180 grams per ton silver, 28.7 grams per ton gold. What do these metallurgical results mean for the project? What do they give you the confidence on in terms of the ability to process any metal that's mined?
So we've done met work at Apollo only. Obviously, it's most advanced. And long story short, the box is checked. There are no problems. Okay. So what you just read off was the results from flotation test work. So we're going to have a split, what they call a split circuit, in mining, because Apollo has the top maybe 500 meters is much more elevated in copper than the lower. So when you have copper over cutoff grade, you're going to make a concentrate. And what you're referring to is the concentrate grade. They are remarkable. Okay. So these results are extremely compelling. You don't recover copper typically from these kind of systems in the 95% range. And that's what we're seeing. And we're also making a concentrate that is plus 25%. That example was 30% copper. But it's, which is amazing, but it's also very enriched in precious metals, in gold and silver. And I guess most importantly, low in deleterious elements, right? So you've got the trifecta of good recoveries, high precious metal grades and low impurities. And it's going to be a con that will be well desired by smelters, I would assume, pretty much anywhere. Keep in mind, we think, Chile is maybe the closest, large scale smeltering system to Colombia. And we know that Chile, their smelters there are at capacity with arsenic, right? The Chilean ore bodies tend to have quite a bit of arsenic in them. So, blending in a concentrate that's much lower in arsenic with high precious metals will be quite desirable. Let me add one more thing. That's the flotation side of the equation. The other is the CIL side. We announced those results, in late 2023. We're going to have well over 90% gold recoveries too. So you're going to have plus 90 gold, plus 90s copper, maybe 75 to 80 silver, and we've got some tungsten in Apollo, and looks like we're going to get 70 to 75-ish% recoveries. Earlier days on that work, but that's pretty standard for tungsten operations globally.
Okay, thank you, Ari. Now, another at a corporate level, a piece of news that obviously we need to talk about. You've got your listing on the NYSE American Stock Exchange. You're already on the sort of TSX. NYSE American, what does that potentially do for the company?
Well, so one, as a Canadian listed company, needs to step back and ask the questions, what is going on with the stock markets in Canada? Why have they vastly underperformed Australia, particularly for resources? And is there something you can do about it? Okay, so we've jumped into there is something we can do about it, and that's listed on the largest stock exchange, in the world, largest stock market country in the world, which is the United States, and we're listing on the NYSE Amex. Canada has been in a lot of pain for a long time, and it's getting worse in terms of its liquidity. Right? There's many reasons for this. I know most people that are watching this have seen Frank Giustra and Pierre Lassonde attack Canada or question why aren't the pension funds mandated to invest in Canada where Australia's are. That is one reason. Another reason that's a bigger problem is I live in the United States now. I'm a Canadian living in the United States. You open up online discount brokerage accounts as a retail individual, and most of them can't buy Canada. It's just not important enough to give access to even quotes. So you can, if you call the 1-800 number of the discount broker and get on the phone with whomever answers 30 minutes later when they decide to pick up, and then they have to figure out how to do it. But for most people, they say that's just too hard and I'm not going to bother. So we need to get where the liquidity is. I think it's going to be a big help. We didn't make this decision lightly, Paul. I think your viewers know it costs more for a company to list in the US. There's higher fees and there's more director and officers insurance required. But if you increase your liquidity and market cap, those will be drop in the bucket in terms of value. And we've run 2 studies already on this. Okay, so on industries, we looked at lithium when it was hot and in favor, and we looked at uranium, which is currently hot and in favor, and you see big differences in both liquidity and valuations of dual listed US Canada versus single only Canadian listed ones. And then there are some gold examples in this too, especially in the juniors. There's some wonderful companies with big market caps that are U.S. listed in the junior space, and you ask yourself, what would those be worth if they were on the TSX Venture, let's say, and generally it's like 1/5 the market cap. So this is important. We're going to access the world, and as soon as we're listed, I mean, my goal is to market the company in the U.S. aggressively. Last thing, from talking to other executives that have done this in various industries, they say it takes about 6 to 9 months for the liquidity to change over where it becomes US dominant. And so that would be kind of the timeline goal to see it with us.
Is there any reason why you went the sort of NYSE Amex route rather than, let's say, OTCQX, which a lot of juniors often have that listing?
We have that listing. Very simply, if you have a discount broker in the US and you look at, let's say, top performers on various exchanges, there is no exchange OTCQX or OTCQB that even comes up. Okay, so there's almost no liquidity on those exchanges. Okay, so it doesn't work. It's in the old days, you used to have to get blue skied in the various states for Americans to buy Canadian companies. This is just like an aggregate blue sky, but it really doesn't improve your liquidity.
Now, copper's been riding high. The metals price got up to $4.50 a pound, touched on $5 a pound. Freeport-McMoran's, the main US copper stock, has hit I think a 5-year high. So it seems US investors are very sort of tuned into the copper story. As you mentioned a moment ago, you've got a potentially very important copper component to the Guayabales project. How much of a selling point do you think that will be in your marketing to the US market? Will you focus more on the copper, focus more on the gold, combination?
Combination, because look, we are more gold dominant. When you look at our metal breakdown suite at Apollo, it's approximately 60% gold, and then an equal split between copper and silver after that. But the copper will be mined in the first bunch of years of the mine. It's in from surface down to about 500 meters. So you're going to be making mainly copper-rich concentrates versus CIL gold or doré, in the initial years of the mine. So absolutely, it's a feature. And and Colombia, is so prospective, as you know, right, for metals. I mean, we've just seen Freeport, who you mentioned, come into Colombia for the very first time in a joint venture with a small junior. Rio Tinto is quite hot on Colombia, as you probably know. They're just opening a large office in Medellin as we speak, and moving many of their people from Chile, which is mature and its best days are behind it, to Colombia, which best days in front of us. Look, I think there's an important message to get out, right, with regards to copper, gold, and silver and other metals, is when you look out in the world today, right, and you say, where can projects get built and permitted, or permitted and built in a time frame that's attractive, and where is their prospectivity to make these discoveries? To me, the northern arc of South America has to be your go-to place. So that's the Ecuador, Colombia, Guyana, Suriname. I'm not including French Guyana because you cannot permit in that country, and Brazil, particularly in the north. Okay, and you look at this area and you say, each of these countries, one can permit a mine in a year or less, and you can advance exploration quickly. This is where deposits are going to come from, and this is where we're going to see big discoveries and metals come out of the ground. Africa, in general terms, I don't want to be specific to individual countries, as you know, seems to be more and more controlled by Russia and China, and less controlled by the West. And so as an investor in projects, not in equities, you're making a 10-year bet. I wouldn't be comfortable putting my money onto projects in Africa over a 10-year horizon right now. The northern arc of South America is the place to be, and that's where you're going to see the big discoveries. Lastly, I'll add on that point, Paul. I mean, I like Central America. It should be included. However, geological prospectivity just isn't really there on the scale that you have in the Andes, and the greenstone belts on the east side of the northern arc of South America.
Now, you sort of bring up the sort of country risk aspect. So let's dig into that a little bit deeper. Colombia's president is, outspoken in his distaste or dislike for natural resource exploitation. A lot of his comments focus on the oil sector, on the coal sector. But in the past couple of weeks, we've seen the mining minister say that we need more oil drilling because, surprise, surprise, the government's revenues from oil and coal are falling because it hasn't been promoting or allowing those sectors to prosper and do what they do. Are you picking up on let's say, a change in focus, a change in emphasis on the government to becoming a bit more receptive to natural resource exploitation?
So, yes, but it's been fine if you're not in coal or oil and gas in Colombia in particular. I mean, a point that I keep making to investors in the approximate 20 months that President Petro's been in power, and I'm not an advocate for what he's been doing. Okay, I mean, he's a problem in many ways, but there have been 6 mines permitted in Colombia. In that same 20 months, how many mines have been permitted in the US? The answer is 1, Gold Rush, right, of Barrick. Canada, I think there's been 2. Okay, so you have a much faster ratio of permitting. Imagine in 2 years from now when the next election takes place in Colombia and it becomes a favorable government for the extractive industry, what might happen, right? So, when you're betting over multi-year horizons, Colombia looks excellent in that regard. And one point I think is worth adding, I mentioned the northern arc of South America, but all those countries aren't built equally, because one thing, to me, I will only invest in a country that has an established mining law, right? Otherwise, you run the risk of Cobre Panama, part 2. Right? When you're negotiating your royalty rate or your tax regime with the government on a mine by mine basis, that may be amazing. And then a new government comes in and oops, right? You've got we want more, or we're shutting it down, or whatever might happen. That's terrible. So, what we're enduring, in Colombia has been okay. It's noisy, but it's been okay. And I think you agree. You live in Medellin. The odds of a left government winning again are as low as it gets. So the question in my mind is Colombia going right? Not if it's going right, it's how right is it going? Is it going center right or very right? We might end up with an Argentina-style situation in Colombia, given how poorly it's going for the current government.
Or maybe in Chile, although it's got a leftist government, the recent election, everything, the rejection of the new constitution has put in place a much further center-right feeling amongst the population. Okay, we're halfway through 2024. What are the sort of plans and what can we expect to hear from Collective throughout the rest of the year?
Drill, baby, drill, and assay results. So we had quite a painful news lag because we took a long Christmas break for the first time in 2 years. Let the drillers go home, and we said, let's sit back and evaluate what's happened and give it some thought. And we felt the pain of that with lack of news, right? Lack of assays. So that lag is now over. We saw assays just recently, as you mentioned, Apollo, and we'll see drilling. If you want impact drilling, we're your company, we're your investment. I think, we have, every company says they have significant upside. Okay, obviously, but we sold Continental Gold for approximately 2 billion Canadian dollars. I think this company's bigger and better, and it's currently trading at $250 million market cap. So, our goal is to take this thing to $3 billion, which I think is what 400,000+ ounces of potential production would be worth. So lots of upside, and let's let the drilling go. And we just started a bull market. This is the other thing, Paul, that people, are frustrated about in general. This bull market is maybe 8 weeks old, right? It's the first one in 12 years. Right, we had bear market bounces in 2016 and 2020, but those were bear market bounces. We've now broken out. Okay, we've seen the majors go first. We'll see the money trickle. This is an amazing time to be buying juniors. I suspect that when we look forward in 2 years, if you threw darts right now at the TSXV board, it'd be pretty hard to lose money over that 2-year time frame. You'd have to really have a bad management team to screw up a day to lose money in a bull market. So we're in a very exciting period of time. Investors should be, making investments now. This is what we all wait for that care about this industry, and I hope our NYSE Amex listing will open us up to a much broader audience, as this bull market gets moving.
Well, let's hope so, Ari, and looking forward to catching up with you in another couple of months to get another update. Ari Sussman, Executive Chair of Collective Mining, which trades under the ticker CNL. Thank you for joining us today, Ari.
Thank you, Paul. And that faux pas of the last company, we have the same symbol, so everyone does it. Please don't worry. Nice to talk to you as always, Matt.
And I'm Paul Harris, and this is CGS.